Hi, welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight will be part one in a two-part series. The case, John Wayne Gacy Jr. So let's go ahead and find out more. Let's go ahead and dive on in. John Wayne Gacy Jr. was born on March 17th, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. John was the second of three children. He was raised Catholic and even attended Catholic school. When John was 11 years old, he was playing by a swing set when he was hit in the head by one of the swings. The accident caused a blood clot in his brain. However, this blood clot was not discovered until he was 16 years old. During this time, he had been suffering a series of blackouts that turned out to be caused by this blood clot. Well, the blackouts stopped when he was given medication to dissolve the blockage in his brain. At the age of 17, John was diagnosed with a non-specific heart ailment. He was hospitalized on several occasions for this throughout his life. However, doctors were never able to pinpoint an exact cause for the pain he was suffering from this heart ailment. However, John was able to hold down a series of part-time jobs and did Boy Scout activities. For example, he had a newspaper route and he worked in a grocery store as a bag boy and as a stock clerk. John seemed to have a normal childhood by all outward appearances. However, looks can be so deceiving. He had a turbulent relationship with his father, John Wayne Gacy Sr. John Sr. was described as being unpleasant and alcohol prone. He verbally and physically assaulted his children. However, John Jr. deeply loved his father, and he desperately wanted to gain his attention and his approval. But he always failed to win his father over. John Sr. passed away on Christmas Day, 1965. John dropped out of high school, and he attended 4 different high schools during his senior year. John then left Chicago and went to Las Vegas. There, he worked part-time as a janitor for Palm Mortuary. But this only lasted a few months because he then returned to Chicago because he was unhappy in Las Vegas. Now, John decided to go to business school. He enrolled and developed a talent for salesmanship. He was a born salesman. It is stated that John could talk his way in and out of practically any situation. After graduating from business college, he went to work as a management trainee at Nunn Bush Shoe Company in downtown Chicago. He thrived in this position, and within only weeks, he was transferred to Springfield, Illinois. There, he managed a men's clothing outlet for the company. He worked there for about a year. John now met a woman, fell in love, and got married. When he married, it was into a wealthy family. So they relocated to Waterloo, Iowa, and they went on to have 2 children. Well, at the request of his father-in-law, John took over management of the family's chicken restaurant. John quickly became a well-known and well-liked member of the community. But that was all going to end. 1968 was the first time John was arrested. He was charged with a felony for attempting to coerce a male employee into sexual acts. John pled guilty to sodomy. He was sentenced to 10 years in Iowa State Men's Reformatory. His wife, following the sentencing, filed for divorce. How did John respond? He told his wife he did not ever want to see her or his children ever again. In fact, he would consider her and the two kids dead. John, after serving only 18 months, was paroled in 1971. He then moved back to Chicago. He went to work as a construction contractor and then started his own construction business. February 1971, John was charged with the attempted rape of a young man. However, the charges were dropped when the victim failed to appear in court for the hearing. July 1971, John remarried, and the woman he remarried was recently divorced. Together, they moved to Des Plaines with financial help from his mother. John spent most of his free time hosting elaborate street parties for friends and neighbors. He was known for dressing as a clown. He also would go to local hospitals and entertain the children, again, dressing as this clown. John was also involved in organizations such as the JCs and the local Democratic Party. As a Democratic precinct captain, he once had his picture taken with First Lady Carter. Now, July 1975, one of John's employees, John Butkovich, disappeared. Butkovich had recently left Gacy's job after an argument over back pay that Butkovich was owed by Gacy. Butkovich's parents urged police to check out John Gacy, but nothing came of it. And sadly, the young man's disappearance went unsolved. March 1976, John's second wife divorced him. She could no longer cope with the marriage due to his unpredictable moods, and he had a bizarre obsession with gay magazines. June 1976, 17-year-old Michael Bonin was en route to catch a train. He was going to meet his stepfather's brother when he disappeared. June 13th, 1976, a 16-year-old named Billy was making money arranging meetings between teenage boys and adult clientele for a commission. He left home on this day and was never seen alive again. December 1976, another of John's employees, a boy named Gregory Gottsick, disappeared. His parents asked police to investigate John Gacy, as he was one of the last people known to have spoken to him. The police, however, did not pursue John Gacy. January 1977, John Sick was an acquaintance of John Butkovich and an acquaintance of Gregory Gottsick. He disappeared. What was the common factor? He also knew John Wayne Gacy. Later that year, one of John's employees was arrested for stealing gasoline from a station, and the car he was driving belonged to John Sick. John Wayne Gacy said that John Sick had sold him the car before leaving town, so the police decided not to pursue this matter. Now, John had been digging holes in his crawl space, but he was getting really tired of digging. So he hired one of his employees, David Cram, to make more space. David stayed in the spare bedroom in John's house. One night, David came home and found John drunk in his clown costume. Kind of bizarre. They had a few drinks, and John tricked David into handcuffs. But things went really out of control. John then started growling and began spinning David around the room and screamed, quote, "I'm going to rape you," end quote. David pushed John down and somehow was able to grab the key, and he escaped this room in John. September 15th, 1977, 18-year-old Robert Gilroy was supposed to catch a bus with friends to go horseback riding, but he never showed up. Robert was nowhere to be found. December 1977, a 19-year-old man complained that John had kidnapped him at gunpoint and forced him into sex. The police, upon hearing this, took no action. March 1978, John lured Jeffrey Rignall into his car. John chloroformed him and took him back to his home, where he raped and tortured him. He then dropped him off in Lincoln Park. Jeffrey remembered a black Oldsmobile, the Kennedy Expressway, and some side streets. He staked out the exit at the expressway until he saw that black Oldsmobile, and he decided to follow it. And where did it end up? At the home of John Wayne Gacy Jr. Police, now taking action, issued a warrant, and they arrested John on July 15th, 1978. John faced an assault and battery charge for the assault on Jeffrey. December 11th, 1978, a 15-year-old boy named Robert Peast disappeared from Des Plaines Pharmacy, where he worked after school. But just before he disappeared, he told a coworker that he was going to a house down the street to talk to some contractor about a job. John had been at the pharmacy that night discussing remodeling jobs with the owner. Well, police went to John's home to discuss Robert's disappearance. Because again, Wayne Gacy was the last person known to talk to Robert. John said he was unable to leave his home and go to the police station to talk to them because there was a recent death in the family. He had to make some phone calls. So the police said that was fine. John later, several hours later, showed up at the police station and gave a statement to police that he knew nothing about Robert's disappearance. And then he just left the police station. A police officer decided to run a background check the next day on John, and that was when he learned that John had committed time for committing sodomy on a teenage boy several years earlier. Police now obtained a search warrant for John's house. Now, that is the end of part 1 of the case of John Wayne Gacy Jr. Stay tuned, as next week will be part 2 in this 2-part series. So thank you for sticking around for this episode of Danny After Dark. If you have any questions or comments on the case, leave it down below. Let's be interactive. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like me to cover? Well, leave it down below. You may see it featured in an upcoming episode. Until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us.